Back a couple years ago, I read about this Georgia hog named Hogzilla that weighed in just short of 800 pounds and right at 7.5 feet long, as if Hogzilla was something special. Well, apparently them Georgia farmers either didn't know much about raising hogs or were trying to starve them poor critters to death. But never mind that, because it really doesn't have much to do with the story. Well, maybe it does. It was back around 1967, and Cousin Rufus had him an old boy Cletus who raised real hogs. Heck, his hogs were born heavier than those poor Georgia hogs. Old Cletus had hogs weighing in at 1,200 pounds and plenty of them. I mean, Cleet fed them up right. Now, I don't mean to be dissing those Georgia hog farmers, because, hey, them boys can make some of the finest of fine moonshine liquor, but they ain't got a clue about hogs, if 800 pounds is something to be boasting and carrying on about. Seems that old Cletus was going to take one of his hogs to the Front Royal Livestock Auction and asked me if I'd like to ride along with him. Heck yeah, Cleet, I said. So the next day, Cleet and I rounded up one of his larger hogs, which was right at 500 pounds heavier than that half-star Georgia Hogzilla hog. Now, I ain't going to say this hog was Cletus' biggest, but he's a big boy. Cletus had him an old 1951 GMC one-ton steak body truck. I don't know if y'all remember them. It had a big old granny gear in it. Only went about 2 miles an hour in the granny gear. That's a low gear. Not pretty, but it ran. That old 51 GMC truck, Cletus and the hog and me were about to have quite an entertaining little adventure, beginning with half an hour coaxing that hog into the back of that truck. We had to throw an entire case of Twinkies in the back of that truck to get him in there, but we got him in. Once loaded, I looked at that truck, and she was a-sagging from the weight of that hog. So, it weren't no 97-pound weakling Georgia hog. No, sir. This was a real hog, and that truck, she certainly was a-sagging. So down the road to Front Royal we headed, hog and all. Now, Cletus, he liked to drink and had him a mason jar of some of that fine shine under the seat of his truck. You know, I'm talking the kind of shine that when you shake it up got the big bubble. Now, if y'all don't know much about shine, the bigger the bubble, the bigger the kick. You don't want no shine with teeny little bubbles. No, sir, he shook that thing up, had them big bubbles. You know what I mean, or if you don't, you should. As soon as we got over the Blue Ridge and on flat land, he reached under the seat of that truck, took him a big old swig off that mason jar full of big bubble moonshine. He passed it over to me. I had me a little swig. I was a young man back then, so I didn't want a whole lot. I handed it back to him. He took 2 big swigs. Next thing you know, he's about, let's just say the truck going all over the road, and it ain't all the hog's fault. Well, everything was going fine. We were about an hour away from Front Royal when he said, "Dang, Bob." I said, "What?" He said, "We're getting pulled." I said, "Huh?" He said, "Yeah, state man got his lights on right behind me." So we pull over and this state boy, Officer Thigpen, come up and ask for the usual, driving license and registration. And then he looks at Cletus, checks out that hog in the back of Cletus' truck, looks at Cletus again, says, "Son, you been drinking?" Well, that officer didn't even wait for Cletus to say anything. He said, "Don't even lie to me, son. I need somebody who can drive this truck better than you." He looked over at me and said, "Can you drive it?" I said, "Yes, sir, I can." He said, "You been drinking?" I said, "No, sir, I have not been drinking." He says, "Good, you drive." Now, this was a long time before Mad Mothers. Now, I don't know if y'all know about Mad Mothers. I knew a whole lot about Mad Mothers when I was a teenager. It seemed my mom was mad all the time. I don't know. I think it was hormones, but it seems like all the mothers are mad. Well, anyway, these days they just put you right in jail for drinking. But back then, before Mad Mothers, the cop would just say, "Well, if you can do any better, you try." So I get behind the wheel and off we go, hog and all. We get down the road about 10 miles and Cletus looks in the mirror and says, "Ain't nobody back there. Pull over. I'll drive." So I pulled over, swapped seats, and Cletus took over the steering wheel duties. Well, I don't mind telling you, but I don't know all that much about why people and animals think, but something got into that poor old hog stinkerator in the back. And whatever it wasn't too good, because he got thrashing around, carrying on. I'm yelling out the window to him. I say, "Hey, hog, you gotta chill." But there ain't no chill in that hog. Now, we still about an hour away from Front Royal when a loud sound of something breaking behind us, and I look back. They're just in time to see that hog break the rear panel gate and jump off the back of Cletus's truck. Yep, the hog just jumped. Sure enough, he just jumped right there on the road. Now, people, I don't know if any of y'all have ever seen a hog bail out onto a highway at 60 miles an hour, but it ain't a pretty sight. Y'all ever seen what happens when a kid gets a direct hit on a pinata? Well, that's exactly what happened to this hog. But before it completely exploded, it was helped along by an elderly couple following behind in a 1956 Buick Roadmaster. Sure enough did. And they found themselves as part of a exploding hog party. I'd never seen nothing like it, and to this day I still haven't. "Sheet fire!" yelled Cletus as we were both watching that hog explosion in the mirror while trying to get his old truck stopped. Now, I'm here to tell you there are times when things happen that just can't be explained, because behind that Buick Roadmaster was, you guessed it, Officer Thigpen, who witnessed the entire event, or whatever you call it, when a hog decides he'd rather take his chances diving out onto Route 340 than go off to the Front Royal livestock auction. I mean, he might have been bought by that older couple in the Buick and become a pet hog and ready to adopt another one, kick back in their air-conditioned Fairwind barn just to keep them sows grinning, if you get my drift. But never mind that thought, because right then and there, none of that mattered too much to Officer Thigpen. Well, in less time it takes to say bacon anyone, me and Cletus was handcuffed to each other, and Officer Thigpen was back helping the folks driving the Buick and calling in for some help. 15 minutes later, there were half a dozen cop cars, 2 ambulances, and a local fire truck surrounding a colossal mess of a hog and a Buick. But I'd say if I had to choose which one I'd rather be, I'd pick the Buick. Everyone remembers their first night in jail, and I'm no different, because that's exactly where me and Cleet were headed. Okay, to be fair, my dad showed up about 3 o'clock in the morning and bailed me out from my charges of being an accessory to something. So it wasn't technically a night in jail, just part of a night in jail. Now, Cletus, he didn't fare as well because the magistrate had set his bail real high, and his wife, Bertha Sue, bless her heart, didn't drive, so he was stuck there for a couple of days. The state dropped my charges a few days later because, hey, I hadn't really committed a crime. I mean, accessory to something ain't an official crime, even in Virginia. I ran into Cletus a few days after his court date. He had taken a fine West Virginia lawyer down to Virginia and might as well saved his money. He lost his driving papers for 2 years. He had to pay the Commonwealth of Virginia a huge amount of money to clean a couple hundred yards of hog parts off of 340. He had to fix them folks' Buick, and he got a big old fine for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or is it the other way around? But there's no moral to the story, people. But Cletus, he did give up hog farming, and he gave up drinking. The last I heard, he was studying to become a Baptist preacher. Me, I gave up to eating pig meat and answering the phone the day before the Front Royal stock auction. And that, friends, is the entire truth.